The latest move in President Trump's immigration crackdown saw the FBI arresting a Wisconsin judge. Federal authorities say the judge helped a man sneak out of her courtroom as federal agents were closing in.
Let's dive into the drama surrounding Kash Patel and his deleted post about a judge's arrest. This incident really highlights how tensions between the Trump administration and the judiciary are rising, especially with the way judges are publicly criticized. Patel took to X to announce that the FBI had arrested Wisconsin Judge Hannah Dugan, claiming she was charged with obstruction for allegedly misdirecting federal agents who were trying to detain an undocumented migrant.
Judge Hannah Dugan's arrest is not just about her, right? This is about striking fear in the heart of the judiciary across the entire country. She's the first official who's been targeted by the Trump regime, and that's because they care about destroying our checks and balances. They care about power. That's what this is. It's not about the judge that's in there right now who's just charged with 2 felonies. It's about striking fear in the judiciary across the entire country.
That post stirred up quite a political firestorm, focusing on judicial independence and immigration enforcement. But here's the kicker. Patel deleted the post just minutes later. This has led people to wonder if he acted too hastily, overstated the facts, or was attempting to turn the arrest into a political weapon.
Arresting the judge on a criminal charge was unnecessary. It was an unnecessary, provocative move that threatens democracy, threatens the separation of powers, and sends a chilling message to other judges not to cross the president's priorities.
Patel got up to really highlights how this administration views the judiciary. He made quite the stir by claiming that the FBI arrested Judge Hannah Dugan for obstructing justice after she supposedly interfered with agents trying to detain an undocumented migrant at a Milwaukee courthouse. Patel accused her of creating a risky situation because the agents had to chase the migrant down before finally capturing him. What's truly mind-boggling is how Patel chose to handle this situation. Instead of following the usual protocol where arrests are communicated through official channels and careful legal terminology, he took to social media. He pitched this arrest as if it was a political maneuver, framing the judge as a threat to public safety. The choice of platform and the way he messaged it gave off serious political vibes rather than standard law enforcement communication.
There really was no need for an arrest. Even if you're going to charge this person, you don't have to arrest them and do this perp walk and all this and post it. She wasn't a flight risk. She's not dangerous. There wasn't the threat of evidence being destroyed. So really, they could have just charged her and had her show up in court.
Moments after posting, he deleted it. This sudden vanishing act raises a lot of eyebrows. Screenshots show that the post was gone within minutes, which makes you wonder if something was amiss with Patel's original claims. Was the information inaccurate? Was it released too soon? Or were they just realizing the political angle wasn't quite right? Even the basics about the judge's status and location were still murky post-announcement, adding to the confusion and raising questions about how the FBI director was managing things. Typically, law enforcement announcements go through rigorous checks to make sure everything's accurate and appropriate, but it seems like Patel bypassed those steps completely with his hasty tweet and delete strategy. So, there's been quite a stir lately, especially with the arrest of a judge, which really fits into an ongoing pattern of tension between the Trump administration and the judiciary. Judges have been halting deportations, blocking executive actions, and demanding due process. This doesn't align with how the administration wants things to work, leading to some serious pushback.
Now to the Trump administration's immigration crackdown as it escalates its attacks on a federal judge in the legal battle over the deportation flights of hundreds of Venezuelans.
This morning, the court demanding answers, giving the Trump administration until noon today to turn over information about those hasty deportation flights.
Now, we've seen some intense public attacks on judges, threats of impeachment, and this recent arrest, all revolving around claims that these officials interfere with enforcement. Kash Patel even went so far as to say that the judge posed a danger to the public by getting in the way of an arrest. That rhetoric matches the administration's narrative on immigration, which frequently paints migrants in a negative light, calling them killers, drug dealers, and all sorts of things, implying that due process just gets in the way of necessary action. What's concerning here is how this all undermines judicial independence. Judges should be free to make decisions without worrying about being arrested for those decisions. Of course, it's worth noting that there might have been a legal basis for the obstruction charges laid against the judge. Those can apply to anyone after all. However, the FBI director's public acknowledgement of this arrest on social media and then promptly deleting it just adds another layer to the story, creating a chilling effect regardless of the merit behind the charges. And let's not forget the broader context. This isn't an isolated incident. During the Trump era, we've seen consistent patterns of hostility toward the courts, from conflicts over travel bans to judges who dared to block executive actions. The administration has too often treated the judiciary as an obstacle instead of a respected counterpart. In summary, Patel's announcement of the judge's arrest fits right into the administration's approach, using law enforcement's platform on social media to publicly shame a judge who, they claim, interfered with their immigration priorities. This politicization raises serious questions about the role and independence of the FBI and the judiciary moving forward. To really get a grip on this whole situation, let's take a closer look at what Kash Patel actually posted, the importance of that deletion and how it fits into the larger picture of the administration's clashes with the courts. So Patel, in a now-deleted post, claimed that the FBI had arrested Judge Hannah Dugan for obstruction. He accused her of misleading federal agents who were trying to detain an undocumented migrant at a Milwaukee courthouse. Patel's claim was that her actions put the public in more danger, suggesting that agents had to chase the migrant on foot before finally making the arrest. Now, the way Patel framed this post definitely raises eyebrows by saying that the judge's conduct created increased danger for the public. He was tapping into the administration's narrative about immigration threats, emphasizing that the agents had to run after the migrant really dramatized the whole obstruction claim. Instead of treating the judge as someone facing allegations, the tone painted her as a criminal who was endangering public safety. It's hard not to see how these framing choices seemed more about political messaging than a straightforward law enforcement announcement. And let's not overlook where Patel chose to make this post on his personal social media account instead of through official FBI channels. That choice speaks volumes. This incident is particularly notable because it happened during a time when the administration is ramping up its immigration crackdown with mass deployments of federal agents and aggressive operations, even leading to confrontations with local officials and courts. This arrest of a judge fits right into that escalation, showing that even judges are not safe from the fallout if they interfere with enforcement priorities. So this whole episode really highlights how the FBI's independence might be getting pressured into serving political ends. You know, official announcements typically go through several checks to ensure everything's accurate, legally sound, and has the right tone. But when you take to personal social media, all those safeguards pretty much vanish. So when Kash Patel decided to share news about a judge's arrest on his personal account instead of through official channels, it really seemed like he wanted that message to reflect his own point of view rather than an institutional stance from the Bureau. What's interesting is that the post was deleted just minutes after it went live, and reporters even managed to capture screenshots before it vanished. The speed of that deletion raised eyebrows, hinting that something wasn't quite right with the original announcement. Maybe there were factual inaccuracies that needed correcting, or perhaps he jumped the gun and announced it before getting the proper go-ahead. Legal worries about negatively affecting ongoing proceedings could have been a factor too. It's even possible that he realized it just wasn't appropriate for someone in his position to make a post like that. The aftermath of the deletion only added to the confusion. Even after he pulled the post, there was still a lot of uncertainty about the judge's status and whereabouts, and that didn't go unnoticed by the media. This whole series of events illustrates why formal review processes are in place. They aimed to prevent exactly this kind of announce and delete confusion. Whatever led to that post being taken down made it clear that Patel wasn't adhering to the standard communication procedures expected from law enforcement. On a separate note, the underlying situation surrounding the arrest raises serious issues. If Judge Dugan really obstructed federal agents who were just doing their jobs, that could be criminal behavior regardless of her position as a judge, After all, judges aren't above the law, and obstruction charges can apply to anyone who gets in the way of legitimate law enforcement activities. The legal determination of whether the judge's actions qualified as obstruction would unfold through usual criminal proceedings. However, how Patel communicated the announcement turned this typical law enforcement matter into a political hot topic. The FBI director posting about the arrest, referring to the judge in a threatening way, and then swiftly deleting it, has a knack for politicizing what should have been a straightforward process. Instead of focusing on the alleged criminal conduct, it framed everything as a clash between the administration and the judiciary, especially against the backdrop of the broader conflict seen during the Trump administration. Right from the beginning of the administration's first term, the way they've responded to court rulings has been pretty striking. Instead of seeing unfavorable decisions as part of the legal process, they've treated them like personal attacks that need to be pushed back against. Take the travel ban cases, for instance. Those led to some pretty harsh words aimed at judges who they referred to as so-called judges, along with demands to overturn their decisions. As they entered the second term, this conflict grew even more intense. The former president has even suggested impeaching judges who don't rule in his favor. His appointees have gone as far as to describe courts that block their policies as standing in the way of legitimate executive power. This kind of rhetoric really casts the courts as roadblocks rather than as an equal branch of government exercising their constitutional duties. Now consider the arrest of a judge who was allegedly hindering immigration enforcement. This just feels like another level of escalation where judicial interference is labeled as a criminal act instead of just being part of their constitutional role. This shift could send a chill through the judiciary, and it's something we really ought to pay attention to. Judges need to feel safe making decisions without worrying about possible retaliation. If there's a belief that ruling against the administration might lead to arrest or investigation, it's bound to color how they handle their cases. Take Judge Dugan's arrest, for instance. Regardless of the legal implications behind it, it sends out a strong message to other judges about the potential consequences of interfering with administration priorities, and not just through appeals. The whole situation profoundly impacts judicial independence, especially in the context of immigration enforcement, where courts have stepped in to block deportation flights and insist on due process. The administration has repeatedly labeled these court actions as nothing more than obstruction. Arresting a judge who supposedly interfered with immigration agents creates a significant message for judges who have legally challenged policies through their rulings. You might think there's a clear difference between physical obstruction and making legal decisions, but the political implications really blur that distinction. And let's not forget about Patel as FBI director. This whole situation has more weight than just a single social media post. The FBI's credibility relies heavily on its perceived independence from politics. When the director makes a public statement about arresting a judge in a heated political case, then quickly deletes it, it raises some serious eyebrows about the AY's impartiality. It's quite something to see how a deleted post from the FBI director can unravel the independence of the Bureau. When Kash Patel decided to post on his personal account, it raised a lot of eyebrows and probably stirred up some thoughts about whether this choice was truly his idea or if he was guided by someone else. Either way, it really does make people question how impartial the FBI stands. Now, the fact that he removed the post suggests he knew it was a bit of a problem. If he thought the information was spot on, why backtrack? The deletion hints at possible issues with the facts, legal implications, or a realization that the FBI shouldn't really be using social media to announce arrests. Regardless of the reason, deleting it definitely recognized that the post shouldn't have seen the light of day, even though the damage to the public perception of judicial independence had already been done. It's helpful to think about how these announcements should really go down. Normally, when a public official is arrested, it's all done through formal press releases that get checked by the necessary legal people. Those announcements stick to neutral language explaining the situation instead of framing it politically. There's really no reason for the FBI director to hop on social media to highlight individual arrests. In this case, the process was sorely ignored. So, Putting it all together, let's look at what this deleted post really shows us and why it matters for how we understand the relationship between the administration and the judiciary. The big takeaway here is that Patel used his personal platform to publicly call out a sitting judge over immigration issues, which brings up serious concerns about making federal law enforcement too political. Even if the underlying arrest might have been valid, his post definitely painted the judge in a negative light, framing her as a dangerous figure instead of simply a judge facing some allegations. By claiming she posed a greater risk to the public, he reflected the administration's usual language around immigration threats. It's almost like this framing suggested that judicial actions against enforcement were a matter of public safety. All these choices in messaging point to a political motive instead of maintaining a neutral law enforcement stance. Choosing to use his personal account over official FBI channels meant he could bypass the usual review processes that ensure communications are proper, accurate, and appropriate in tone. By posting on his own, he likely wanted this to be seen as his personal take rather than an official statement from the Bureau. I find it really striking that the deletion happened so quickly. It shows there was an awareness that something went wrong, whether it was due to incorrect details, an announcement made too soon, legal worries, or just realizing it wasn't suitable. They clearly recognized that the post shouldn't have been there to begin with, but by that point, screenshots were already doing the rounds, and the damage to how people view judicial independence had taken root. That deletion couldn't take back what had already been shared. Afterward, it created more confusion, especially since key information about the judge's situation was still murky. This whole sequence of announcing something and then deleting it is exactly the kind of problem that proper official processes are meant to prevent. Whatever led to the deletion, it highlighted that standard procedures were not followed for such a delicate situation involving a potential arrest of someone in the judiciary. Now, sure, the arrest could have a solid legal footing because, let's face it, judges aren't above the law and obstruction charges can apply to anyone. But Kash Patel's approach turned what could have been a simple law enforcement issue into a political dust-up between the administration and the judiciary. The way this was announced added a layer of political drama that proper channels usually help to keep at bay. It's alarming when you think about the impact on judicial independence. Judges need to be able to make decisions without the fear of being punished for them. If they start to think that making an unpopular ruling could lead to arrest or prosecution, it's going to change how they handle their cases. The FBI director announcing the arrest of a judge who allegedly interfered with immigration enforcement on social media laced with political overtones sends a problematic message to every judge out there. This message undermines independence. Regardless of the specifics of this case, the ongoing clash between the administration and the courts is essential context here. There have been continuous verbal attacks on judges, threats of impeachment, and framing of certain rulings as obstruction. The administration has often viewed courts as hurdles, and arresting a judge fits into this escalating pattern. This shift from just rhetorical offenses to actual law enforcement against perceived judicial meddling raises the stakes. Judges are now faced with the tough reality of how their decisions could be perceived by a government that may not favor them. It's also worth noting that the FBI's image of independence takes a hit with incidents like this. When the director personally posts about arresting a judge in such a charged political context and then hastily deletes it, it definitely invites skepticism about the situation. It's honestly hard to believe that Kash Patel, the FBI director, put out a social media post about a judge being arrested for supposedly interfering with immigration enforcement. He went so far as to frame her actions as a public danger, but then, just minutes later, he deleted the post after it caused a wave of backlash. This whole situation is pretty alarming when you think about the message it sends. Now, all of this comes against the backdrop of a troubling trend where the administration has been criticizing the judiciary. Courts have been blocking certain immigration policies that the administration has pushed, and they've been labeled as obstructive. So when a judge gets arrested and it's announced in such a politically charged way, it's a clear signal to other judges about what might happen if they challenge the administration. Patel's actions don't just stop there. He's faced criticism for decisions regarding FBI personnel, accusing him of targeting agents involved in investigations related to Trump. There are even lawsuits from fired agents claiming their constitutional rights were violated. This judge's arrest fits into a bigger picture where it seems he's using his role more to further the administration's political goals than to uphold the independence of the Bureau. And let's not overlook what this deleted post really says about how the administration views the judiciary. It's one thing to publicly call out a judge. It's another to do it through personal social media in a way that's loaded with political framing. It's dangerous territory. Even though he quickly took the post down, the damage to the perception of judicial independence had already been done, and the underlying implications linger. So in short, the whole episode brings up some serious worries about how the FBI is being politicized and what that means for the independence of our judicial system. The administration is really diving into a heated battle with the courts, especially since these courts keep blocking their policies. It's kind of wild that they even acknowledged the post was a bit problematic. But hey, the message to the judges was definitely already sent. I can see this conflict with the judiciary only getting worse as officials seem keen on framing the judges' rulings as some kind of obstruction. If you find our discussions useful, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay connected. You definitely won't want to miss our updates on how the administration interacts with the courts and how federal law enforcement is becoming more politicized. So the post might have been deleted, but the message got through loud and clear. The implications for judicial independence are pretty serious, and I look forward to sharing more with you next time.